All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great meeting you. This is the way we meet each other nowadays. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Mayela Mujica. I'm the innovation manager at RBW, or also known as Rich, Brilliant, Willing. We've just summarized the name for ease of use.
I love it. I love it. Are those after people's names, or is that actual the words rich, brilliant,
it's
and willing?
it's a wordplay on
Okay, I love
the
it.
three founders' names. So Theo Richardson, Alex Williams, and Charles. Oh my God.
I
Wait.
love it. I love it.
Charles
That's
Brill.
great.
So
Great
yeah,
brand.
Rich, Brilliant, Willing, but now we're most commonly known as RBW. Yeah.
Hmm.
And we are a decorative lighting brand. We design and manufacture decorative fixtures for hospitality, workplace, and residential projects. And we're based in New York.
Nice, nice. And so tell me a little bit about so were you one of the founders of the organization, or are you relatively recent?
No. The organization was founded in 2009 by the three partners, Theo, Charles, and Alex. And since then, it's been really fast growing. I joined the company about over 3 years ago. And since then we've grown exponentially each year, to the point that this year we just acquired a 100,000 square foot facility in Kingston, New York, and we're moving there. And last year we were about 30 people, and now we're up to 60, I believe. So
Nice, nice.
um so yeah, that's how it started, and that's how we're going.
Very good, very good. So you're the innovation manager there. So what is your definition, or what your company's definition, your definition of innovation? I mean, it sounds like the field itself is pretty innovative, right? I mean, you can do so many things, so many cool new things in the space, but like what do you do to like bring forward innovative new things into the organization?
Yeah, so as the innovation manager, I'm in charge of a couple of different things. So one is the launching new products and staying up to date with new technologies and new processes. But I'm also in charge of like our internal innovation process um, and how we actually bring products to fruition. So not just like what we're doing, but how we're doing it. Um, and I would say, like, what are you passionate about? I think that's the next thing that's what I'm passionate about. Like at the moment, I think that as somebody who started in the field as a product designer, where you were really involved in, making things, modeling, shaving foam, and doing all these things that are really just drawing, sketching,
All
yeah.
that design thinking stuff, right? All that design thinking stuff.
Where you're actually like making the things, and then making furniture, and actually like getting in the shop and doing the actual stuff. As you grow in your career, you start to detach a little bit about that. So now it's how do I apply that design mentality to the process and to the organization, and how to be creative in different ways.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that everybody who's in the innovation space has come from all different places. Like some people have come from tech, some from marketing, some from design, whatever. Do you feel that like the background you have, a design background, is probably made it a lot easier for you to slide into that space?
Well, I think so. I think that everybody can be creative and look at, I think that what makes innovation unique is being able to have all those different perspectives and join all those different perspectives and into one thing. So and more for me, more than being creative, I think that I'm the one who's gathering all that information and all those different voices, and making sure that they're all equally present in our
Hmm.
process. So that's really what I've tried to bring to the innovation team and to the innovation process within RBW.
So you can tell you us a little about the changes that you made to make the process work better from where before when you first started? Was there an innovation group already at the company before you started, or did you create it?
So there was a development team, and I was brought in as a product manager for the development team. And we already had, I would say, like the ideas for the process were already there, and a lot of stuff we were doing organically. Being a small team, you're able to go over and talk to the person building the fixture and say like, hey, what's working here? And then go over to the sales team and have a conversation about what feedback from the client. So a lot of those conversations and points of connections were already happening. I just my job was really come in and turn them into a process. So defining the stages and making sure that, there's accountability. It's not just like, hey, here's some feedback for you. It's actually you are accountable for a stage in the process. Your voice is important. And, it's as being in the operations team, being in the sales team, being in the marketing team, everybody contributes to the development of new products and to the innovation process within our organization. And it's just not on the side, they're active members of the development team. So after that, that process was defined, the innovation team or the development team morphed into the innovation team, and some other business units and roles were sort of merged because it made more sense to have us be under one umbrella, like compliance and performance. The change management. So some of those things were really brought together into one umbrella. And that's really where the sort of team is now, where the innovation team is really we lead the product development efforts, but we're not the only ones accountable for the process.
Right. So I guess you're saying that there is a differentiation between product management and innovation. It's the innovation is at the front end of the process, or if I were to say, because a lot of the skills as a product manager, very similar skills required for innovation manager, but what are the differences do you see there?
I think that innovation is definitely throughout. I don't see it at the front end, but I think the difference is that as a project manager, you're really just following the steps and doing the checklist and doing it that way, versus as an innovation manager, you're really trying to pull stuff from just from everywhere. You're gathering information from a lot more different from different channels. And there's also a thing with scale, you're looking at the big picture and at the world, but you're also having to, the project manager in you is also having to look at the task or how is this going to turn into a product or a more, so you're going from big to small to big again, and long-term, short-term, and then really looking at what's next, what are we doing next? What's going to happen next? How are we, not just in the products that we're making, but in the tools that we're providing our clients, how can we better support them? And how are we going, what processes are we going to put in place to grow and to maintain that level of growth?
Right. So I know in some organizations, innovation is there's a battle between leadership and innovation. Have you ever had situations where you were proposing some new innovative thing and sort of leadership pushed back on you for one reason or another? And then if you did, how did you get over that barrier?
No, I think that we're really lucky that the three partners have a design background. So it's really refreshing. They're the ones also, they're the ones who started with the original product. So the company runs a lot like a design firm. So I don't think that there's ever any pushback. The other thing that makes us unique to other design firms or to other product development brands, especially the ones that really have that very heavy design background, is that I think that the partners at the beginning of their careers realized that they had to be very organized and that data was really important, and you only know what you measure. So from working at other places and just like from seeing how other firms work, like I think that we gather a lot of data, and we're always looking at a lot of data, and we use that as one of our main tools to make decisions. So I think that as long as the path that you're proposing is has a business case behind it, has some data to prove that you have an assumption and you want to go there, like everybody's good with it. Like we have goals that we're trying to reach, and how you reach them is more up to like each team or each business unit, but they just have to be substantiated in data.
That's interesting. I mean, because it's always the ROI situation, right? Whenever you hear about innovation, it's like, well, what's the ROI? What's the ROI? And a lot of times you can't. You have no idea what the ROI is, because you're creating products that are new to the world. No one knows if there's going to be demand or not. It's kind of like what happened with Twitter. It's like when they were audio, they were doing podcasting, and then they invented Twitter. They had no idea that it was going to take off the way it did, but they just built it and put it out there anyway. So, I mean, in your situation, it sounds like they're pretty flexible when it comes to ROI, or are they pretty strict when it comes to, we want to make sure that this thing's got a really strong business model behind it before we start building?
I think it's a combination. Like we try to create our ROIs and our project charters in a way that there's some constraints and some restraints, because I also feel that like people can be a lot more creative when you give them a little bit of a direction versus, you know, design a fixture is like,
oh yeah, exactly. Constraints are the best. If you give people constraints, they can be really creative.
Exactly. So we do try to provide some constraints, and now like as we've matured as a company, we do, you know, as any other like manufacturer of things, you know, what's our portfolio looking like, where are our gaps, like, and so we do look at that stuff and we try to fill that stuff, but we also give opportunity for exploration, which I think is really important, because you don't know what's gonna come next. And some of our best products started as explorations. Vitus, Palindrome, like they were both like, they didn't have a end in mind. It was more like, we want to do something, a hanging light or a
I gotta say, I love I gotta recommend that anybody who's listening to the show or watching the show definitely go to their website and check out the designs, because they're amazing, they're phenomenal, they're so cool. And did those mostly come from internal minds, or did you get some from customers? Like, did a customer come to you and say, hey, I'd like a fixture that's like X, and then you guys sort of invented it? Which way, how does it normally go? Does it usually come from inside or out?
Most of our designs come from inside. Because we do rely a lot on client feedback and customers, and we have an amazing network of clients, and that we, you know, when we're early on in the development process, if we have a concept, we'll always like pass it through really trusted partners. But most of the ideas are like, hey, I really, you know, like I've been looking for this pendant but everything out there, like nothing really matches what I need in my projects, like, but they don't really give us the aesthetic direction. It's more like, oh, I'm really looking for a sconce that like has these specific requirements. But yeah, most of our stuff is internal. We do have some product that are collaborations with other designers or with other architects or with other interior designers or lighting designers, and those are very much collaborative projects.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also love what's happened with technology, right? LED technology has really upped the game for lighting, because it used to be there were so many technical limitations, and now you can pretty much do anything, like almost anything. So it's just great that
it's amazing. And there's you know, it used to be that we were constrained by the light bulb, and everything had to revolve around the light bulb, and it had to be the shape because of the light bulb. And for us, like LEDs really, you know, broke that that form factor, and we can do amazing things and different shapes and different patterns and different configurations because there's no longer those constraints. And it's been exponential, the improvements and the changes in the industry. I think that it's still, it hasn't fully reached the residential user yet. Like a lot of that is still, even in LEDs still look like the light bulb, and you still put the the like LED light bulb in, but it's getting there, and it's only increased, you know, like it's only going to get more and more. Like it's here to stay for sure.
I can't wait for those designs to get into residential, because I have one of those. I have one of those desk lamp that's just like a really thin, like bar of LED, and there's just so much. I remember almost like 10, 15 years ago when I worked for a little tiny startup in San Francisco, the guy who was in the office beside us was just starting to create all sorts of amazing candelabras and things like that out of LEDs. And he says, wow, this thing is amazing. You can do so much with it that you could never do before. And he was creating these amazing, they're sculptures. They're basically sculptures of LED light, you know, as opposed to, it's not really a lamp. It's an art object that just happens to light up.
No, and that's a really big thing for us. Like our sort of guiding phrase is that we believe in the power of light to create atmosphere. And with every product that we make, like we're really looking at that at that atmosphere. Like what are the light qualities of this fixture? Like how are we how's the space going to be impacted by this object? And that's just something that we're always thinking of. And as designers, it's also another layer of, you know, it's not just like the physical thing, how it looks, but now you have to consider this other this other phase or this other thing. Like, how does it look turned off? How does it look turned on? How does it dim? How, you know, like all that, how does it, you know, what's the glow or the sparkle or the light quality that you want to give? What optics are you putting in there? Like there's so much more to consider.
Right. Can you tell us about, have there been any situations where you've come out with a product that looked really great, like you had a lot of feedback from customers, everybody thought it was fantastic, and then you put it out there and it just bombed completely? Has that ever happened to you?
I think it's happened a couple of times. I don't know if like bomb completely is the
well, if you create such beautiful stuff, it can never bomb completely because it's got some aesthetic value to it, right?
Yeah. So, but we do, and that's something we call it sunsetting when we want to, we want to like eliminate a product or eliminate a category or something that we just didn't see the potential in it, or the potential didn't really pan out the way that we hoped. I'm trying to think of a product more than specific. Well, we did do early on in the partners' careers, we did do tabletop fixtures or floor lamps. But then we sort of saw the opportunity to move away from that, just because our niche or our market was more in the hospitality and workplace area. But I think they were still beautiful. It's just like they didn't sell. So we put our focus elsewhere, and more than we always try to like give them a little bit of something when they're not working out. So part of our process is to do continuous improvement on products. So it might look the same, but it might perform better. If the performance was the issue, if size, you know, we try to evaluate what's going on and tweak it or improve the materials, or try to, if it's a price point issue, like trying to understand why a product fail is also very important. But yeah, we have sunset a couple of products that just like didn't didn't make it. I think that, you know, as a company grows and matures, you also, you know, like the collection also matures. So a lot of that newer or older stuff is no longer in the collection, but some of them are still holding strong. I think that Crisp and Dimple, that are one of like our top sellers. Our crisp was one of the original designs, and it's still up there as a bestseller. I think that, you know, when you find a good design and it goes into that like timeless category, you can have it forever.
Yeah. No, I love all your stuff, and it's just like, can I buy this for home
Yeah,
use?
you can buy it off
Okay.
the website. Yeah. We do, you know, like even though we were talking about like residential, not fully making it out there's still a lot of, you know, there's anybody can buy an LED light. It might require a little bit of more of thought on like how you're going to install it, but it's still accessible. It's just it hasn't made it to the mass, you know, like market as like a full product just yet, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love these designs. They're fantastic. So when you were talking about building new products, you said a lot of times it comes internally. So the ideas start internally. One of the designers comes up with something, and then they have to test it. I'm assuming they're testing it. Are they testing it with prospects and customers? Like, do you have design thinking sessions where you bring the customers and the prospects into the office and say, hey, this is what we're thinking, or can I get your thoughts on it? Or do you have this kind of like classical design thinking sessions where you bring the customers or prospects into the office as well?
Yeah, so our innovation process has different stages, and each stage, depending on the product, but most stages have a point of connection with a client, or with somebody who we've identified as a trusted partner. It could be an architect, a lighting designer, a contractor. We work with so many different people and in different connections of, you know, of the industry, that it just depends on, you know, like who we want feedback on what stage of the product. But right. For sure, yeah, like the our process is unique, that we do ask for feedback, a lot of feedback along the way. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very collaborative process. So every single business unit in our organization is has a voice and is present in our innovation process. So at the beginning of the process, in the sketch phase, we have somebody from the build team, somebody from the operations team, somebody from the marketing team, sales, etc., all looking at the design and looking at the product, so that by the time we make it through, you know, actual production, it's launched, like first, it's not a surprise. They know that that's coming and they know how to build it.
Yeah, you don't want to dump something on the sales team's head. So like, here, go sell this. And they're like, what? Yeah. I've never seen this before.
But yeah, so it's not a surprise. There's also like a high level of ownership because they were involved. So this is as much mine as it is yours. So I do want to see it succeed. I was directly involved in the creation of this. So you know, like, this is mine.
Excellent.
So there is a higher sense of ownership throughout the organization. And then it also leads to a better product and less mistakes. And if you have somebody from the build team reviewing the product when it's a mock-up, when it's a 3D print, and they can say, hey, I actually can't build this because, you know, my screwdriver doesn't fit through the hole.
Yeah.
That prevents mistakes, you know, further down in the chain. So having people involved in all these different stages is really a key to the success of our products.
Interesting. So how do you think that sounds great for a company of your size, but what happens when you grow even further? I mean, are you sensing that you might step away from something like that and become more compartmentalized, or will you always have that sort of end-to-end, everybody involved?
Well, I think we'll always have that. It just depends on, it doesn't have to be always the same person involved. It just has to be somebody from the department who can, you know, be the representative of that business unit, and then go back to their team and say like, hey, we reviewed this. What do you guys think? Or just be the person who's accountable for that. And, you know, as we grow, it might just mean that different teams, there's different teams with different representatives in the different product pipelines that we have. It doesn't always have to be the same people. And it's almost better that it's not, because that way you get a lot more variety and a lot more.
Oh yeah, you bring in new ideas from different people. That's
yeah.
So I guess the other question I have is that, so the very beginning of the process, are you saying that, so do you start with like a client site or a client ask, or do you ever just do blue sky? I don't know where this is going to fit, because I'm looking at some of your designs and I'm like, I can see how somebody could come to you and say, I need a blue crossbar-y kind of thing that would fit into this space, and then you guys think about it. But have you ever had? Are you mostly like that, or is it mostly somebody comes up with a concept and then tries to fit into the space?
No, we do start with a project charter, but the project charters are usually, there's a lot of specificity in them, but it does leave enough space to create. So usually we don't do the whole, hey, I have a design and I want to, let's make it. Maybe early on that's how we started, but now there's a little bit more of a process.
Right.
We do look at ideas that, like, we gather a lot of sales data, like opportunities specifically, and a lot of sales input, like, oh, the clients keep asking for a linear pendant. We need a linear pendant. We don't have one. We need one that's like up, down light. So a lot of that is like, okay, in the pipeline for next year, let's work on a linear pendant, whether,
right.
Like that's as like restrictive as
where you start seeing all this data, like, oh, hey, client 7 has asked for a linear pendant.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we should develop.
Yeah. But a blue linear pendant that is in the shape of a bar, no, we don't get that specific. That comes from the design team and the just like where the design could take you. Yeah.
So do you have situations where they just say, well, I don't know what I want, here's a picture of the space, you come up with something? Do you get that very often?
Well, most of the designs that we make the design and we have a catalog, and then the client chooses from that catalog. We usually don't do designs to like custom designs to spec, or custom designs where they're like, we want something for this space, unless the opportunity sort of like warrants it. But there has been situations where more than like, hey, I have this space, fill it. It's more like, hey, I have this building, I want a linear light, but the linear light, because of the building requirements, has to do X, Y, and Z, and we'll design something specific for that space. And a lot of the times it's based on an existing design that we have, and we'll customize it for that space. So that's something that we would do if the opportunity is worth the investment in a new product. Because a lot of the times when somebody says like, hey, I want this, but I want it custom, you have to think about tooling, you have to think about UL compliance and certification and photometry, and it's not as easy as just like, oh, I'm going to modify it and here it is.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just look at a science fiction novel and say, I want this kind of light panel, and it's like, wait a minute, you have to engineer all that, right? To make sure it works properly.
Yeah, and you have to make sure that it's safe and that it actually gives like performance is really important to us. So we are a decorative lighting brand, but the quality of light is very, very important. So we are looking at, the optics and lumen per watt performance and the lumen output and the CCT and the CRI and all those things that make up like good quality of light.
Right. So I want to ask you about trends. I mean, you've got some beautiful designs here. Are you seeing any trends in the lighting space that like
we should know
round, square, linear, like LED, like it seems like it's a little all over the map, right? There's all sorts of styles here. So do you see any specific trends happening in the space?
Well, because LEDs can take any shape, there's not really any aesthetic trends. So that's not something that I would say I'm noticing. If anything, like the lack of form is a trend. Almost.
The trend is that there's no trend. How's that?
Yeah, in terms of form, but I would
Yeah.
say that we're going back to less plastics, more glass, metal. That's something that we've been noticing, which we are all for. I would say, what were some of the other things? I think that because of the changes, if you look at the changes in the workplace, or like what used to be, a couple of years ago, where people were doing all these shared workplaces, WeWork and that sort of thing. And you had that with the construction trend of taking away all the ceiling panels. That led to a lot of noise. So there was, before COVID, there was a trend to do more acoustic lighting, and I don't think that trend is going away. Like, acoustic solutions are definitely here to stay.
What acoustic lighting is that? With like you build speakers into the lighting, or what is acoustic lighting? Just
acoustic lighting. It has acoustic properties. A lot of the times, it has different panels of different materials that absorb sound. So what happens when you take the ceiling panels away is that you're left with, bare cement or bare, materials.
Yeah, exposed pipes and wires and all sorts of stuff, which
are very hard. So they bounce a lot of light. So if like next time that you're at a restaurant and you notice that it's very, very loud, look around you, and it's
like every restaurant I've ever been to in the last however many years.
It's probably because of that, because it's either low ceilings and there's a lot of like exposed hard material. So with acoustic lighting or just like acoustic panels and stuff, like what they try to do is bounce the light or have it absorb in different ways.
Interesting. So the lighting fixtures actually absorb sound.
Yeah. Absorb, and then usually sound goes in and then it sort of stays inside and it can't go out. So that's something that we're noticing as a trend before COVID, but it's still carrying on, like it's still going strong.
Very cool.
But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. I think incorporating new materials or different materials is another. And I think that people are now starting to go beyond the light bulb and really look at what the light is doing in the space, not just like, oh, here's this cool thing that, oh, let me put a light in it and it's also a fixture.
Yeah. Awesome. So this is great. So now it's time to think like a futurist. It's the year 2031. It's 10 years from now. What's lighting going to be like in 10 years? How will it have changed?
Well, I think there's two things that I can think about. One is I don't think it's the aesthetics or the light itself, but it's more like the industry, and and this isn't just for lighting, but material and construction in general. My hope, at least, is that by 2031, we know what is in our products and exactly where it came from, where was it made, what materials it has, like material transparency. There's already a trend, but there needs to be so much more. But I would say, like, where does the product come from? Where was it made? And where does it go at the end of its life? I think those three things are super important, and we just need to like really push to get there, so that by 2031 we know those things. There's a huge problem in our industry where we don't know where the raw material is coming from and where it's being made and then where it's being assembled, and all those things are super important and more crucial every day. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that's more recent is I think that by 2031, we're going to have like the metaverse is here to stay. And so
but what happens in the metaverse? Are you going to be designing like virtual light fixtures? Because it's like you're creating things that don't exist. It's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah. And so that's the whole new thing. Like we are having this conversation on like, okay, like, are we going to be designing fixtures for the metaverse? And what do those fixtures look like? Because now you're in this virtual space that it could be anything. Is it going to reflect our real world, or is it going to, take a whole new form? And what is lighting going to play in that, in what role is it going to play in that space? That's
I want to
really
challenge you
exciting.
guys to actually sell your products at the same price for virtual versions of it, because I think you should, if you get like a $2,000 fixture in the real world, it should cost $2,000 in the metaverse as well, because if you think about the amount of work to build that, IP is worth something.
The development is the same. Like in order to create products for the metaverse, you still have to make these 3D models, which means you still have to make, you're still designing the product.
The physical piece is barely any of it. I mean, if you think about things like music, right? I mean, the physical piece of music is barely anything. It's all the work ahead of it to create the music. And it's the same. It's almost the same for any of these physical objects. The work to create the virtual object is almost the same to create the physical object. The only thing you've got is that last little bit where you have the 3D printer spit most of it out, right?
Yeah. But I think that's really interesting. What is the metaverse going to look like? And I know that there's been all these projections. I think Bill Gates talked about this, like, in 2 or 3 years, we're going to be meeting, instead of meeting in Zoom meetings, we're going to be meeting in this, like virtual meeting rooms. And so what are those places going to look like? Like, how are we going to furnish them, light them? Are we going to be floating around in bubbles? Are we going to be sitting down in traditional, like there's a lot that's going to be defined, but maybe lighting will play a role.
Oh, it'll have to play a role, because the metaverse has to be lit, right?
Yeah.
And if you have to think about it, I mean, you're probably going to want to be in a calming space. I mean, your office could be a little crazy, and then you say, okay, I'm doing a task that requires organization, so my workspace is going to be super organized and clean, and the lighting for that space has got to be linear and sharp, and then I'm doing something creative, so I want it to be a little more cyber steampunk or something like that. So there's all sorts of lighting that could come out of that. So that's very cool. So you've actually started thinking about that right now. I didn't realize that manufacturers were already thinking about the metaverse. That's great.
We just recently started thinking about like, what are like, are we going to have to design products for the metaverse? Who knows?
No, I never thought of that, but that's really where you have to go, because who knows how much time. I mean, it's like Ready Player One, right? I mean, they spend a lot of time in the metaverse. So, I mean, we've already starting to see things like people buying digital real estate, $2 million for a piece of digital real estate. I'm going, that's something just like coded that.
Or Nike bought this like virtual sneaker maker or something in the metaverse. Like there's things are happening. We just have to, we really have to try and figure out where we.
It's crazy, but if you think about it, I mean, pretty much all manufacturers really need to look at, creating, if not an initiative, a metaverse initiative, but they have to create like a department to start thinking about spinning off or creating virtual versions of their current product set.
And is it virtual versions, or is it new different versions altogether? Like that's
well, both, right? You say, I really like this light, I really like this lamp on my desk, I would like a metaverse version of it too, but at the same time, here's like 100 other versions that we can create that are totally fanciful and do not exist in the real world. I mean, you could have something floating with no base, right? You could have just like a drone light that just happens to float around wherever you happen to be looking. It just lights up that area. So God, we're gonna be living in a video game.
And I guess like, how are those designs in the metaverse going to then inform our physical products? Because it's a cycle, like one informs the other and back and forth. So yeah, does that mean that, we're also going to then have those, drone lights? We don't know,
Yeah.
like that, but that's the exciting part.
And also the sort of the product creation. You could create virtual versions of the product and then have a customer just experience it in the metaverse. And they're like, wow, let me mess around with this, and then realize, oh, here's a way to turn this into a physical product, because I've lived with it in the metaverse for a certain amount of time, so I know how to change it. And then I create a physical product out of it. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
I've never thought of all those implications.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this is great. So I want to be one of the first to use one of your metaverse products. So how do I get
You will, once we have one. We'll see how that. Yeah.
That's what people are going to start hiring. It's like metaverse engineer. Like,
yeah.
must have skills in Unity, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic. Well, thank you so much. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Just go to the website or connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, you can go to the website. My personal email is mayela@rbw.com. You can always reach me there or through LinkedIn. Yeah, that's always, you can connect.
Fantastic. And I recommend everybody go see the designs on the site, because they're fantastic. And I can't wait for the metaverse versions. Those will be very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye.